Freeze.
Podcast.
The Freeze.
Podcast.
The Freeze. Podcast.
These days, you can never be too careful. Lots of advertisers and even potential hackers can be lurking about. That's why it's best to get yourself a secure VPN. You wouldn't leave the house without clothes, would you? Well, you need to cover yourself. Atlas VPN blocks ads, trackers, and even malicious websites with Tracker Blocker, and even protects your digital accounts and data with Data Breach Monitor. Atlas VPN also ensures a secure and seamless web browsing experience, in addition to offering ultra-fast 4K streaming with their optimized servers. Visit atlasvpn.io/2chillmedia to get over 80% off today. Today's episode is also sponsored by the music software Reason. Reason is now offering their own plugin called The Rack, and you can use The Rack with Ableton Live, Logic, and FL Studio. Reason also includes a collection of instruments, effects, sounds, and presets that make music creation easy, fun, and inspiring. Making music at home, keep your inspiration with Reason's legendary instruments. It can be used in any digital audio workstation or DAW. Visit deepfreezechillin.com/Reason11. Welcome to The Freeze, the podcast about hip-hop chatter. Today's episode, I want to talk about EarthGang's Ghetto Gods. Now, EarthGang is a rap duo that I'm pretty excited about, and I first familiarized myself with them when I was first introduced to their music when I initially joined the Central Sauce Collective. This is the much-anticipated studio sophomore effort by the Atlanta duo EarthGang, who signed under J. Cole's Dreamville Records. The duo showed much promise with their major label debut Mirrorland, a trip into their ATL influences that garnered them comparisons to Outkast and much positive press. Now, the conceit of that album is that it was analogous to The Wiz, which is kind of, I wouldn't say rip-off, but an homage to The Wizard of Oz, the children's classic The Wizard of Oz. Now, that album was whimsical with singing, but a melange of Dirty South influences, and sorry, parody, homage may not exactly be the right word for the Wizard of Oz and the relationship to the Wiz. It's more of sort of a parody, a blaxploitation film, more of the Wizard of Oz when that was sort of a thing in the 70s. But it is a thing, and it's certainly a very interesting piece of, I guess, social commentary, if you will, for its time. Very interesting for its time. And Ghetto Gods is first and foremost an album about survival. With a strong foundation and even stronger single with American Horror Story, the album showed a lot of promise. Of the song, Johnny Venus of EarthGang says, he wrote the song in the middle of the pandemic, feeling trapped and caged with no escape. But we take the worst of every situation and make the best of it. Ghetto Gods is a testament to our resiliency, the untapped potential inside all of us. And this, of course, was an Instagram statement about the single when he first released it. And listening to it as a single, listening to it on the album, you definitely get the feeling that it is, one of the most poignant songs on the album, talking about the horrors of the Middle Passage. And for those unfamiliar or wanting more context, I would highly recommend checking out the show American Gods, with the scene introducing a Nancy or Mr. Nancy. Look up a Nancy or Mr. Nancy speech on YouTube. Mr. Nancy is, of course, played by Orlando Jones, who gives an unforgettable monologue. I would almost say it's a spiritual companion. So this song is almost a spiritual companion to that show, the introduction to Mr. Nancy, and about I would say it also serves as a primer to sort of the brutality of what the Europeans did to the African slaves and on the slave ships and such. And I would say that for anyone wanting a brief history lesson, the Mr. Nancy speech or a Nancy speech certainly gives a very succinct and clear summary of what happened. Now, while Mirrorland showed the contours of what EarthGang is capable of, the biggest problem with Ghetto Gods is that it doesn't delineate out their artistry. And part of the problem here is that it feels like there's a lack of creative direction or a strategic focus, if you will. Conceptually, it's sort of all over the map. While this sort of worked with the good chaotic energy of Mirrorland, and it was to kind of show off EarthGang's versatility and show what they were capable of, it kind of hindered this project. For they're a little more seasoned. They should have had a little more. It should have come together a little more solidly. And I think that's a criticism that has been noted by other reviewers as well, and I kind of felt similar. Now, I will say the caveat to that is that the album on repeated listens does get better, and the more you listen to it, I guess it feels more cohesive. But the first kind of listen, or the first few listens, you may kind of question the sequencing or why certain songs are in place in the album. Now, that said, Dr. Dot or Wow Great, the sing-song approach to songwriting is not that dissimilar to Bone Thugs and Harmony from Cleveland, and the musicality feels contemporary. And that I do feel that there were almost like influences, like from Drake, or by, like, there is sort of like a, I don't know if that's just because it's the modern sound, but there does kind of feel like a minute Drake influence. And that may even be because like Drake was influenced by the South as well. So I don't know if that's the reason, or if it just because Drake obviously influenced the contemporary sound. So there's certain songs where I almost feel like there is a bit of a Drake influence. And of course, Drake is sort of a big artist, of course, for Black culture. And they're very, I guess, they kind of wear their heart on their sleeve, and definitely open to their influences, right? So that said, the central hook of Lie to Me feels almost hypnotic, and it really is kind of fitting with the overall vibe of the song, about a couple lying to each other about material worth, but also trying to survive by keeping up with appearances. And it's sort of like this cat and mouse game where this couple is really, I would say, almost more together for like the material aspect, and they were attracted, or they were attracted to one another because of the material worth. But then once they got to know each other, it's kind of like this empty relationship, but they don't want to leave. So they're kind of like lying to themselves, and hence the title. And so that is a really interesting, uh, interesting concept, and also tying in with their own survival, as they're lying to themselves to kind of survive through it, to survive this relationship. So with concepts like these, like American Horror Story and Lie to Me, EarthGang is quickly becoming one of the most interesting artists, or they are some of the most interesting artists of this new generation, along with other artists like Denzel Curry, who definitely have I wouldn't say conscious, but definitely have some sort of like social commentary to their output. And I think that's what's most alluring to me as a listener. Now, in contrast to, I guess, Mirrorland, this album doesn't have as many bangers, I would say, but it does have a few. Like the jam, Waterboys, really does feel kind of almost as a spiritual successor to Top Down from the first album. And yeah, I thought it was really, really interesting. JID hops on a verse and delivers a great verse as per usual. J. Cole sort of kind of just, he's there, doesn't really say anything that's too over the top. And the thing with J. Cole's verses, it seemed he was kind of almost like embittered sort of from the feedback from the off season, although like that was well received by critics, but I don't know if there were certain fans who didn't like it, or people in his personal life, because he was sort of saying that, he's off that now. Don't be fooled by the homeless aesthetic, and like, back to bragging and that kind of thing. So I was like, oh, that's kind of unfortunate if he's kind of decided to kind of give up and going in that direction. But J. Cole as the boss, kind of making up, given that appearance there, was really interesting. Now, as exclaims, Luke Fox mentions, EarthGang conjures up the ghosts of their influences, and this again is something that they've been doing on previous projects. On the last project, they certainly, like I said, wear their heart on their sleeve, and you can definitely tell the influences. Black Pearl is an interesting one because at first I kind of felt like it could have been left off the project. It's simultaneously trying to empower women, but feels a bit misogynistic. But I get that it's trying to sort of be like a bad bitch anthem, but channeling Uncle Luke. But it's also sort of parodying black women stereotypes. So it's kind of like a tongue-in-cheek type of song, but I don't know if necessarily everyone's going to get the overlying message of the song. So it may go over some people's heads that it's kind of like a parody in a way. And I also think, like, had they gotten, Baby Tate did great. Like, she was great on it, but I think getting someone more notable like a Megan Thee Stallion may have given it the extra sauce to kind of push it over the edge. And I think that would have made it better. And I could definitely hear Megan on that beat. That said, it was a good song. And like I said, at first it seemed out of place, but overall, when we're talking about, survival, and when you start to really kind of think about the concept of the album or the overall structure of the album, I guess it does fit arguably. But I did think at first that it wasn't necessarily a fit. So I think that could have been maybe better sequenced, maybe. So one thing I will say about this album is that there are too many rap skits. It kind of feels like a 90s rap album in a way with the skits. So I guess we're bringing skits back into albums. There are a lot of like references to spoken word, but then upon like hearing interviews with the two guys, I kind of see that they were influenced by Maya Angelou. So, that kind of fits too. Like the spoken word, like the humor skits. I mean, that's the thing with skits. After you listen to them one time, they're not funny anymore. Power was an interesting song. That beat change was really exciting. And the sequencing with Power after American Horror Story works really well. The feature, of course, features CeeLo Green, talking about, the sacrifice for strength and how sacrifice brings strength. And then, there's a reference to Nick Cannon, and then Nick Cannon's also like talking on the back of it, how he named his daughter Power and all that. And I don't know. I could have used without, Nick Cannon doing a soliloquy, if you will. But other than that, like the concept behind it and sort of like the struggle for power and talking about that as a concept or overall concept, I thought was really interesting. Now, my overall impression was that, this was a great album. A little more relaxed and laid back than the previous project. I would say definitely check these guys out. They definitely have fun personalities. Getting to know them through like interviews, they're kind of like a new generation Dead Prez, almost like I wouldn't say like a Dead Prez were kind of hipster. I would say almost like a Gen Z Dead Prez, if you will, a Gen Z or younger millennial. Dead Prez. So this is kind of what a contemporary sort of, for the old hip hop heads, just to give you a little bit of context there. Check these guys out. They seem very earnest. I will say that, again, this album does get better on repeat listens, and, the album definitely pulled from experiences. One thing I did want to talk about was sort of the kind of the drama that went on with the album. And yeah, like Ghetto Gods initially was set to be released on the 28th of January, but it was pushed back for a month due to issues with sample clearances, according to a post made on IG, and I believe that was EarthGang's IG. So then it got pushed to February, I think it was February 22nd, because they wanted to do like there's some spiritual significance to the day 222. So, or that was the rumor, and then it got pushed back a few more days to the day that it released. I believe was the 24th of February. So there is that. So highly enjoyable album overall. Would highly recommend it. And yeah, I mean that's pretty much it for the EarthGang review. In terms of like other topics that I may just want to touch on, something I want to touch on is the Super Bowl performances, or the halftime show, which of course featured Snoop Dogg, Dr. Dre, who was really the headliner, Eminem, 50 Cent, Mary J. Blige, and Kendrick Lamar. And it's funny, I almost forgot Kendrick there. So I would say the Dr. Dre and Snoop Dogg gave amazing performances. It was definitely, it's kind of cool, kind of that hip hop has sort of been given this huge cultural embrace. Now, as millennials have kind of aged into working professionals, of course, we've been professionals for the last few years, but it's as this generation, as my generation gets older, the stuff that we listen to that was once kind of, I guess, like countercultural or outside of the social norm getting acceptance. Because I remember, old people's reaction to rap music, like when I was a kid, it was definitely like almost kind of jarring. And to have that now, like have rap be accepted as a mainstream thing was really interesting. Um, Arguably it's kind of hip hop has maybe lost its edge in that sense in a way. Um, barring of course the SoundCloud rap, but that's also come and gone as well. So yeah, I mean, having these artists that we grew up listening to as kids perform at the Super Bowl was really interesting in itself. Dr. Dre, I was actually really impressed. I thought this was going to be underwhelming. There was certainly a lot of hype surrounding it, and it was something I was kind of I was avoiding to look at it, to be honest. But I will say I was impressed with the set design, the overall set design, which had kind of like these little trailers for each individual artist, or like little houses on these like trailers. Dr. Dre had an excellent set. He had like a makeshift studio that opened up, then revealing Snoop Dogg, and they did, was it Nothing But a G thing, I think? And, Dr. Dre did several of his most notable songs. Eminem coming out to Forgot About Dre was interesting. I wish he had performed his verse on that. But he, of course, did Lose Yourself, which, of course, that's everybody knows Lose Yourself. 50 Cent did In the Club, which, in hindsight, hasn't really aged that well. I thought, we could have really done without 50, but I guess it was cool to include him. Interestingly enough, the Game was excluded out of this crop of artists that I think, just in terms of like the overall Dr. Dre proteges, right?